My husband's death shattered me, but his millionaire boss's phone call? That destroyed everything I thought I knew. Mrs. Odom, I discovered something urgent. Come to my office immediately. His voice carried an edge of warning. Tell no one, not your son, not your daughter-in-law. You're in danger. When I arrived and saw who stood waiting at that door, my world stopped spinning. Thank God you came. Stay with me through this journey. Come at your city, so I can see how far the story travels. 45 years of marriage, and suddenly I felt like a ghost haunting my own funeral. I sat frozen in the front pew while Marcus and Kira orchestrated everything, my son and daughter-in-law treating me like fragile china they were afraid to touch. Mama, let us handle this. Just stay calm. Marcus's voice dripped with condescension. Kira flashed that practiced smile I'd grown to despise. We've got everything under control. I remained silent. Fighting required strength I'd buried 3 days ago with Elijah's heart attack. One morning he discussed spring gardens over breakfast. The next, I found him collapsed, lifeless in our garage. The church overflowed with mourners, colleagues, neighbors, distant relatives. They all approached Marcus and Kira with condolences, as if they'd lost a husband. I became invisible, just some fragile old woman of 68 who needed protecting from reality. Grandma's so delicate, Kira whispered to someone. We're handling everything. Delicate. That word cut deeper than any condolence. Elijah never saw me as delicate. To him, I was Lena, his partner, his equal. But 5 years with Kira had gradually eroded that. During the service, I noticed something chilling. Marcus seemed relieved rather than grief-stricken. Each condolence met with unsettling composure. Kira's tears looked choreographed, a performance I couldn't quite believe. After the burial, people gathered at our home, my home, for lunch Kira had arranged without asking. I retreated to my window chair, watching her command the space like she already owned it. Lena, you should rest. Kira appeared with unwanted tea. You've had such a difficult day. I'm perfectly fine here. Marcus settled across from me. Mama, Kira and I discussed this. You shouldn't stay here alone. This house is too big, and after Dad, I flooded my veins. What are you suggesting? Well, he exchanged that loaded glance with Kira. There are wonderful retirement communities. You'd be safer with people your age. I'm not going to any nursing home. Indignation gave me unexpected strength. Kira took my hand with unbearable gentleness. Not a nursing home, Lena. Elegant senior living. We'd visit every weekend. This is my home. My resolve crumbled under their pitying stares. The phone interrupted us. Marcus answered, returning annoyed. Someone from Dad's office about paperwork. What paperwork? I don't know. I told them you were indisposed, that I'd handle it. Something in his tone twisted wrong. Marcus, your father worked there 30 years. If they need to speak with me, I have that right. Mama, don't worry about business matters. We'll handle everything legal. That night, alone in our bed for the first time in 45 years, the silence suffocated me. Then my phone rang. A known number. Mrs. Lena Odom? Theodore Vance here, your husband's boss at Sterling and Grant Financial. I recognized the name Elijah had mentioned with respect. Mr. Vance, thank you for calling. Ma'am, my deepest condolences. Elijah was extraordinary. Everyone here valued him immensely. He paused. Mrs. Odom, we need to meet urgently. There's something about your husband's final months you must know. My heart hammered. What kind of thing? Not over the phone. Can you come tomorrow at 10? His voice dropped. And ma'am, this is crucial. Don't tell your son or daughter-in-law anything about this call. Elijah was very specific about that. Air caught in my throat. Why? What's happening? Please, Mrs. Odom. Tomorrow at 10. Your husband requested that if anything happened to him, I ensure I spoke only with you. Only you. The line died. I sat in darkness, phone trembling in my hands. Elijah had anticipated his death. Left specific instructions. Instructions that excluded Marcus and Kira. For the first time since losing him, I felt Elijah speaking from somewhere beyond, telling me to pay attention, that this wasn't the time for fragility. Something was terribly, devastatingly wrong, and I was the only one who could discover what. Morning brought unexpected determination. I dressed in the navy suit Elijah always said made me look elegant and strong. Marcus called early. "How'd you sleep, Mama? Kira and I think you should stay with us a few days." "I'm fine, son. Actually, I have errands this morning." Pause. "Errands where?" "The pharmacy. My blood pressure medication ran out." "I can bring your pills. You don't need to drive." "Marcus, I'm not an invalid." His sigh carried frustration. "Fine. Be careful. Call if you need anything." The Sterling and Grant building towered 20 stories of intimidating glass. Elijah had worked on the 15th floor for 3 decades. I'd never been to the executive level before. Theodore Vance's office stunned me. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, mahogany furniture radiating power. The man himself, around 55 with distinguished gray hair and an expensive suit, stood when I entered. Genuine concern filled his eyes. "Mrs. Odom, thank you for coming. Please sit." I settled into leather that probably cost more than my mortgage. "First, I want you to know your husband was one of our most valuable employees. 30 years without a single complaint." "Thank you." His tone suggested more was coming. He retrieved a thick folder from his cabinet, placing it before me. "Mrs. Odom, during his final 6 months, Elijah came to me repeatedly with very specific concerns." He opened the folder, pages and pages of documents, handwritten notes in Elijah's familiar script, photographs of other documents. "Concerns about what?" His eyes met mine directly. "About his family." The floor tilted. "My family." "Elijah believed your son and daughter-in-law were manipulating him into significant changes to his will and bank accounts." The words didn't compute. "That's impossible. Marcus would never." "Mrs. Odom," he interrupted gently, "did you know that in the last 8 months, Elijah received multiple visits from your son and daughter-in-law, often when you weren't home? They repeatedly suggested he organize things so that if something happened, Marcus would have immediate legal power over all your financial and medical decisions." I shook my head, but cold certainty settled in my stomach. "That can't be true." He turned a page toward me, a partially completed legal document. Elijah's signature at the bottom, crossed out. "Elijah brought this 3 months ago. Said Marcus pressured him to sign it, claiming it would protect you from difficult decisions if he died." I read the opening lines. "A power of attorney transfer giving Marcus total control over our finances and any medical decisions concerning me if Elijah died or became incapacitated." But he didn't sign it. No. And that's when Elijah started worrying. When he refused, Marcus became upset, called him selfish, said he wasn't thinking about what was best for you. My mind made connections I desperately didn't want to make. I remembered their visits this past year, the whispering that stopped when I entered rooms. "There's more." He turned another page. "Elijah said Kira began suggesting you showed signs of confusion, memory loss, that you needed closer medical supervision." "What?" Shock punched through me. "Apparently, she started commenting to both Elijah and Marcus that you repeated stories, forgot conversations, that perhaps you needed supervision. My memory is fine. Elijah knew that. That's why he started documenting everything." He showed me page after page, Elijah's meticulous notes with dates, times, transcribed conversations. My husband had been keeping evidence of what appeared to be a sustained campaign to undermine me and seize control of our lives. "Why didn't he tell me?" "He said he didn't want to worry you until he was certain. He hoped he was wrong." A loud knock interrupted us. We turned. My heart stopped. Marcus and Kira stood in the doorway, expressions mixing surprise with something darker. "Mama!" Marcus's voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. "What are you doing here?" Kira stepped forward with that condescending smile I now recognized as a mask. "Lena, we were so worried when we couldn't find you. Why didn't you tell us you were coming here?" Theodore stood slowly, tension visible in every line. "Mr. Odom, Mrs. Odom, this is a private conversation between your mother and me. I'd appreciate your respect for that." Kira laughed, forced, brittle. "With all respect, Mr. Vance, Lena's been very fragile since Elijah's death. We don't think it's appropriate for her to make important decisions without family supervision." "Family supervision?" I repeated, feeling indignation rise. "I'm 68 years old, not a child." Marcus exchanged that loaded glance with Kira, the same one from the funeral, heavy with meaning I couldn't decipher. Of course you're not a child, Mama. His tone patronized. We just want to protect you from people who might exploit your grief. I looked at Theodore, who watched silently, then at the closed folder containing information that would change everything. Theodore, I said, using his name deliberately, could you give me a few minutes alone with my son and daughter-in-law? He nodded. Of course. I'll be right outside. Once he left, the air transformed. Marcus visibly relaxed, as if he'd won something important. Mama, I don't know what that man's been telling you, but you must understand. People can be very manipulative when money's involved. Money! Kira sat beside me. Lena, honey, we know Elijah had considerable life insurance. With a house and savings, there are unscrupulous people who exploit widows. Cold certainty settled in my stomach. How do you two know about Elijah's life insurance? Another charged glance between them. Well, Marcus looked uncomfortable for the first time. Dad mentioned it months ago when we discussed making sure you were cared for if something happened. Funny, I said slowly, because Elijah never mentioned those conversations to me. Silence stretched. Then I heard a sound that stopped my world. A cough. A cough I'd recognize anywhere. We all turned toward the private bathroom connected to Theodore's office. The door opened slowly. A figure emerged that made my heart stop, then pound so hard I thought it would burst through my chest. Elijah, my husband, the man I'd buried 4 days ago, stood there alive, breathing, looking at me with love and apology in his eyes. Hello, Lena, he said softly. I think we need to talk. I screamed. I think I screamed. What I remember is the world spinning, and if Elijah hadn't rushed forward, I would have collapsed. What? How? I touched his face with trembling hands, confirming reality. Behind us, Kira gasped. Marcus muttered something I won't repeat. Elijah held me with familiar hands that had steadied me for 45 years. I'm sorry, my love. So sorry to put you through this. But it was the only way. The only way to what? He looked at Marcus and Kira, expression hardening in a way I'd never seen. The only way to protect you from them. Marcus found his voice first. This is impossible. You're dead. We saw you. There was a funeral. A death certificate. Elijah straightened, keeping a protective arm around me. There was a falsified death certificate, with help from a discreet doctor and a funeral director who owed favors. Theodore helped me arrange everything. But why? I whispered. Elijah looked at me tenderly before addressing Marcus and Kira again. Because I discovered what you were planning. Kira went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. No. Elijah walked to the desk, opening the folder Theodore had closed. Then you don't recognize this? He pulled out documents, copies of emails, text messages, transcribed recordings. Mama's starting to show signs of dementia, Elijah read aloud. I think you should consider full-time care soon. If Dad signs the documents I prepared, we can ensure she has the best possible care when the time comes. Marcus went completely white. Elijah continued. Kira agreed, the sooner the better. The house alone is worth almost $500,000, not counting retirement savings. I sat down heavily, physically struck. They'd been planning to declare me incompetent, calculating the value of our house, our savings. This is out of context, Marcus said desperately. We were worried about Mama. We just wanted to ensure. Ensure what? Elijah interrupted. That you could control her life? Declare her incompetent and institutionalize her while you sold the house and spent our savings. Kira stood abruptly. This is ridiculous, Elijah. Faking your death is a crime. False certificates, fraudulent documents. You'll face consequences. You're right, Elijah said calmly. I'm willing to face consequences. But first, I wanted Lena to know the truth about what you've been planning. He walked to me, taking my hands. My love, for 8 months. They've been visiting when you're not here. Initially, I thought they worried about us. But I gradually realized every conversation was designed to convince me you were losing mental capacity, that you needed supervision, that it would be selfish not to make legal arrangements to protect you. I looked at Marcus, my son, the baby I'd carried, comforted through nightmares, loved unconditionally for 35 years. Is that true? For a moment, I saw something that might have been shame. Then it hardened. Mama, You don't understand the financial pressures we face. Kira and I have debts, obligations. So it was true. Elijah squeezed my hands. When I realized what was happening, I hired a private investigator. We discovered Marcus has gambling debts exceeding $150,000. And Kira's been using credit cards in your name without your knowledge. The world wobbled again. Credit cards in my name? 3 different cards, Elijah said softly, with total debt over $10,000. Kira finally exploded. Enough, Elijah. I don't know what sick game you're playing, but this ends now. Lena, let's go. Clearly your husband has lost his mind. But I didn't move. For the first time in months, maybe years, everything made sense. The constant visits, the exaggerated concern, the suggestions about my memory, the rush to make decisions immediately after the funeral. They hadn't been taking care of me. They'd been preparing to sacrifice me. I'm not going anywhere, I finally said. My voice was stronger than it had sounded in a long time. But I think you two should leave. Marcus's expression transformed into something I'd never seen before. He was no longer my worried son. He was a stranger who just lost something he'd been counting as his. The following days became an emotional roller coaster I'll never forget. Elijah stayed at a discreet hotel while Theodore helped navigate the legal complications of his resurrection. I returned home, but for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a prisoner in my own life. Marcus and Kira had left Theodore's office in shock and fury. I hadn't heard from them for 48 hours, until they appeared at my door Wednesday morning. I watched them arrive from the window. Marcus walked with that childhood determination I recognized when he'd done something wrong and was determined to convince me it wasn't his fault. I opened the door before they could ring. Hello, Mama. Marcus's voice had that carefully controlled quality he used when managing difficult situations. Marcus. Kira. My voice sounded colder than intended. I didn't try to soften it. Can we come in? Kira asked. We need to talk. I let them in but didn't invite them to sit. We stood in the living room that had witnessed so many happy family gatherings. Now it felt like a battlefield. Mama, Marcus began, we've been thinking a lot about what happened at the office. I'm sure you have. Kira stepped forward. Lena, I think there are many misunderstandings here. Yes, Marcus, and I have been concerned about your well-being, but everything we did was with the best intentions. Best intentions? I repeated, like using my name to open credit cards. Those cards were for emergencies, Marcus said quickly. Expenses that might arise related to your care. Like a $4,000 necklace? Kira sighed. Okay, I made a mistake. But Lena, you must understand the pressure we've been under. Marcus's debts are expenses. Your debts are not my responsibility. The words came easily, surprisingly so. Marcus changed tactics. Mama, Dad's manipulating you. Doesn't it seem strange that he'd fake his own death? What kind of man does that? The kind trying to protect his wife from a son planning to steal everything from her. We weren't stealing. Marcus exploded. That house, that money, it was eventually going to be ours anyway. We were just trying to speed up the process because we needed help. The brutal honesty of that statement left me speechless. Marcus, I finally said, you're telling me you've been waiting for Elijah and me to die so you could have our money. That's not how it sounds. Kira intervened desperately. All families plan for the future. Families don't plan to declare their parents incompetent with false medical diagnoses. Kira turned pale. That was just a precaution in case you truly needed care in the future. A precaution you paid $10,000 for? Marcus ran his hands through his hair, losing patience. Mama, listen to yourself. You've become paranoid. Dad's filling your head with crazy ideas. Crazy ideas? I repeated, like the idea that I deserve to live in my own home without anyone trying to declare me insane. No one's trying to declare you crazy. Marcus yelled. I walked to the phone and dialed a memorized number. What are you doing? Kira asked. Calling Elijah. I think he should be here for this conversation. Mama, no. But it was already too late. Elijah arrived 20 minutes later. He'd been expecting my call, probably knowing this moment would come. When he walked in, tension intensified immediately. Marcus. Kira. He greeted them neutrally. Dad, Marcus said. We need to resolve this as a family. Elijah sat beside me on the sofa, automatically taking my hand. I'm listening. Kira sat opposite us, assuming her most vulnerable posture. Elijah, I know what we did looks bad, but you must understand, we were desperate. Explain the desperation. Marcus spoke quickly, words rushing out like a rehearsed speech. The debts piled up faster than expected. The casino. I know it was stupid, but I thought I could win money fast. When that didn't work, we panicked. So you decided to rob your parents. It's not robbing. Marcus shouted. You have more money than you'll ever spend. That house is too big for 2 people. We were just accelerating the inheritance. Accelerating the inheritance by declaring me incompetent? Kira started crying. Not real tears, but calculated crying I'd seen her use before when she wanted something. Lena, we never wanted to hurt you. We just wanted to ensure you were taken care of, and that we could pay off our debts. You thought you could manage both by stealing my money and locking me in an assisted living facility. It wasn't a nursing home, Marcus said. The Magnolia Place is a very nice retirement community. You would have been comfortable there. Against my will. You would have adapted eventually, Kira murmured. The silence that followed was absolute. Even they seemed to realize how monstrous their planning sounded. Elijah slowly stood. Marcus, listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. My son looked up. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the child he'd been. Your mother and I have decided you're no longer part of our lives, Elijah said firmly but without emotion. We don't want to see you, hear from you, or give you access to any of our finances or properties. Marcus jumped up. You can't do that. I'm your son. You're my biological son, Elijah corrected. But you stopped being my family the day you decided our death would be more convenient than our life. Kira also stood, crying completely abandoned. This is ridiculous, Elijah. Lena, you can't cut us off completely. We're family. No, I said, also standing. Family doesn't try to steal. Family doesn't make their loved ones doubt their own sanity. Family doesn't count the days until you die to cash in your money. Marcus looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. You know what, Mama? Maybe you're right. Maybe this is better for everyone. Because I was already tired of pretending I cared about you when all I really wanted was for you to get out of the way. Those words hit like a physical slap. But strangely, they also liberated me. All the love, guilt, hope that there might be some misunderstanding, it evaporated in that moment. Leave, I said simply. Take your things out of my house and leave. Gladly, Marcus said. But this doesn't end here. We're going to fight this. We're going to prove Dad faked his death, that you're not competent to make decisions. Elijah smiled, but it wasn't kind. Go ahead. And when you do, be sure to explain to the judge why you were planning to declare your mother incompetent with fake medical documents. I'm sure he'll be very interested. Marcus and Kira looked at each other. I could see panic growing as they realized they had no exit strategy. This doesn't end here, Marcus muttered, but his voice had lost all conviction. Yes, it does, I said. It ends exactly here. I watched them leave, knowing it would probably be the last time I'd see my son. I should have felt sadness. All I felt was deep, clean relief. For the first time in over a year, I was free. 6 months later, I'm sitting on the porch of our new home, watching Elijah plant roses in the garden he'd always dreamed of having. We moved to a small town called Redwood Springs, 3 hours away, where no one knows our story. Where we can simply be Elijah and Lena, a retired couple enjoying their golden years. The transition wasn't easy. There were moments, especially during the first weeks, when I woke pre-dawn wondering if we'd done the right thing. Cutting off Marcus completely felt like amputating part of my body, no matter how infected. But Elijah constantly reminded me why we'd made that decision. My love, he'd say when he found me crying at night, you cannot save someone willing to destroy you. Theodore had helped us manage the legal complications. Falsifying the death certificate resulted in fines and community service for Elijah. But when evidence of Marcus and Kira's conspiracy was presented, the judge was surprisingly sympathetic. I've seen many cases of elder financial abuse, he told us during the hearing, but rarely one as systematic and cruel as this. Marcus and Kira tried to follow through on their threat to fight legally. Their case quickly fell apart when the district attorney decided to investigate the fraudulent credit cards and false medical documents. In the end, they were the ones facing criminal charges, not us. Last I heard, Marcus was serving 18 months probation for financial fraud. Kira had lost her nursing license. They divorced 6 weeks after everything came to light, each blaming the other for dragging them into such a desperate situation. I feel no satisfaction in their downfall. Only a strange sense of closure, like finishing a disturbing book you can finally put aside. We sold the big house where we'd raised Marcus. It was too full of complicated memories. Frankly, they were right about one thing. It was too big for 2 people. With the money from the sale, we bought the smaller house in Redwood Springs, with enough land for Elijah's garden and a mountain view that makes every sunrise feel like a gift. We also paid off all the debts Marcus and Kira had accumulated in our name. Not because we owed it to them, but because we wanted to start this new phase completely clean, without any financial connection to our past. Do you think Marcus will ever understand what he did? I asked Elijah one evening as we prepared dinner together. Elijah stops chopping vegetables, looking at me with those wise eyes that made me fall in love 46 years ago. I don't know, my love, but it's no longer our responsibility to teach him. That's the hardest lesson I've learned these months. For 35 years, I felt responsible for Marcus's happiness and well-being. Even as an adult, even married, he was still my baby who needed protection and guidance. But some adults choose paths their parents cannot follow. Sometimes the truest love is knowing when to let them go. We've made new friends here. Brenda and George, the couple next door, invited us to dinner last week. During conversation, Brenda mentioned they'd cut ties with their son 10 years ago. He was an addict, she explained simply. Every time we tried helping him, he dragged us into his chaos. In the end, we had to choose, save our marriage and our sanity, or continue being victims of his destruction. Was it difficult? I asked. George took Brenda's hand. It was the hardest decision of our lives, but it was also the one that saved us. I hadn't realized until that moment how much I needed to hear that we weren't the only parents who'd had to make such an extreme decision. This morning, Elijah brought me coffee in bed, a routine we've developed in our new life. As I took my first sip, I noticed he'd left a letter on the nightstand. What's this? It arrived yesterday. It's from Marcus. My heart stopped. Did you read it? It's for you. I held the letter for several minutes before opening it. The handwriting was the same I'd seen on thousands of Mother's Day cards, but the words were those of a stranger. Mama, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you something. Kira and I divorced. She blamed everything on my gambling debts. But I know the truth is more complicated than that. He explained he was in therapy, trying to understand how he'd reached the point of conspiring against his own parents. The therapist says I have entitlement issues, that I've always felt I deserve things without working for them. He came to the point near the end. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I understand why you had to walk away from me. If you ever want to give me another chance, I'll be working to be the person I should have been all along. When I finished reading, I handed the letter to Elijah. What do you think? I think he sounds like someone trying to change. I said honestly, but I also think words are easy. Elijah nodded. And what do you want to do? Nothing, I said, surprising myself with the certainty. I want to continue living our life. And if one day he proves with real actions that he's changed, maybe we can reconsider. And if he never does, I looked out the window at the garden, where the roses Elijah had planted were beginning to bloom. Then we'll live a beautiful life without him. That afternoon, while Elijah worked in the garden, I decided to write my own letter, not to Marcus, but to myself. A kind of declaration of independence from the guilt I'd been carrying. Dear 68-year-old Lena, forgive yourself for loving so much it almost cost you everything. Forgive yourself for trusting so much it almost cost you your sanity. Forgive yourself for believing family love is always unconditional. But also, celebrate your strength. Celebrate that when you finally saw the truth, you had the courage to act on it. Celebrate that you chose your own life over everyone else's comfort. That night, as Elijah and I prepared for sleep in our new bedroom with a mountain view, he asked, "Do you regret anything?" Cutting him off completely. "No," I replied without hesitation. "Not seeing the signs sooner, sometimes." and me faking my death. I smiled. It was dramatic, but effective. Elijah laughed. Definitely effective. We were silent for a moment, listening to night sounds in our new home. You know what's strangest? I said finally. What? I feel younger now than I did at 50, as if I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there. Elijah took my hand in the darkness. That's what happens when you stop living for other people and start living for yourself. This morning, I received a call from Brenda, our new neighbor. Lena, a group of us are going to the farmer's market Saturday, then lunch at that new French cafe. Would you like to come? I'd love to, I replied without hesitation. A year ago, I would have had to consult with Marcus and Kira, make sure they didn't need anything, consider if it was appropriate for a woman my age to go out with friends. Now, I simply say yes to things that make me happy. As I write these lines, sitting on my porch with a cup of tea and the sound of Elijah whistling as he waters his roses, I realize this is the first time in decades I feel completely free. Free from guilt, free from expectations, free from the need to justify my decisions to people who never had my best interests at heart. Marcus was right about one thing. Elijah and I probably won't live many more years. But the years we have left will be ours, lived on our terms, surrounded by people who love us unconditionally and without hidden agendas. I discover that's worth more than any toxic family tie I may have lost in the process. Sometimes the greatest freedom comes from having the courage to walk into the unknown, leaving behind even those you love most when that love had become indistinguishable from harm. Tonight, I'll sleep soundly for the first time in 2 years, knowing tomorrow I'll wake to a life that is completely mine. Did you like my story? If you listened till the end, drop a number 1 in the comments. If you enjoyed it, you can support me by liking the video and sending a small tip. I've got lots of other life stories like this on my channel, so make sure to subscribe and check them out. I've added 2 new stories on screen that everyone loves. Thanks for being here. See you in the next one. With love,